What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, back with another treasure format video. And this is a video that I'm sure people have been looking forward to for quite some time. In this video, I'm going to discuss Toons. Now, Toons aren't the best deck in this format. I wouldn't even necessarily say they're tier 2 or even maybe Rogue. But they are a fun sort of jank strategy that Magic Ruler introduced. And so there is some potential here to make something of them. I'm not sure if it's something good, but it's something at least. But before diving into exactly how this monstrosity of a deck works, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe. We're trying to reach 500 subscribers this month, and we're currently around like 417 or so. So we're making good pace, and it would be great if we reach that milestone by the end of the month. Halfway to 1,000 would be really great to see. And in addition, by subscribing, you'll get to know when I post videos about all these retro formats that aren't really explored anywhere else. In addition, if you want to play any of these formats that I show off on the channel, we do have a Discord server. Link will be in the description down below. It's a great place to find other duelists exploring these formats and get some great games. And lastly, if you enjoy this video, as always, please be sure to leave a like down below. It really does help increase the visibility of these videos quite a bit. But with all that out of the way, let's dive into Toons. So Toons are their own sort of special type of monster, which is very interesting. And they basically revolve around a continuous spell, Toon World. Now, Toon World is a spell that doesn't really do anything except just cost you 1,000 life points to pay, and it just sticks around on the field. But while Toon World is out on the field, you can special summon out your Toons, like Toon Mermaid and Toon Summon Skull, and it can just be a great way to get a bunch of monsters on field. Now, these monsters can't attack the turn they're summoned out, so you can't really make a huge OTK push with them. And the tribute monsters like Toon Summon Skull, as well as Toon Blue Eyes White Dragon, which we're not actually playing in this deck, do require tributes. But they can all attack directly if they manage to stick around. So this can lead to major offensive pressure, and potentially win you the game if your opponent just doesn't have a way to out them. So there are probably more optimal ways to build this deck, but the way that we're building the deck is that we're playing 3 Toon Mermaid, 3 Toon Summon Skull. We're going all in on the Toons. Toon Mermaids aren't the best. They've got 1,500 defense, which isn't much. But to be fair, the only monster that will beat over that in most decks is going to be Mechanical Chaser. So it's not that bad. And, you know, just being able to get out a monster on the field to potentially attack in for 1,400 direct next turn is pretty decent. They can also serve as tribute fodder for Toon Summon Skull, which can be great to special summon out as well. This is your main win condition. Just bringing out Toon Summon Skulls and attacking in for 2,500 each turn is very powerful. But we do have some other win conditions as well. Cannon Soldier can be great in this deck, given how many monsters you can swarm the field with. For instance, if your opponent's down pretty low, you've got a bunch of Toons in hand and a Cannon Soldier, you can bring out Cannon Soldier, special summon out a ton of Toons, and then get tributing, potentially killing your opponent out of nowhere. But the deck isn't all offensive power, though. We've also got 2 Banisher of the Light to serve as defenders here. You can maybe substitute these for some Giant Soldier of Stone, but honestly, this deck doesn't really care too much about graveyard shenanigans, so it's probably better just to have this on field to potentially mess up some of your opponent's plays. And the main thing we really care about here is the 2k defense, which is very hard for most decks to get over. We also have 2 Witch of the Black Forest, 2 Sangad. These are kind of the only monsters that actually do really care about the graveyard, but in general, you can play around it so that Banisher and these aren't on the field at the same time. But these are pretty great. The Sangans can search out pretty much everything in your deck except for the Toon Summon Skulls, but the Witches can do that for you. And you can actually get some very interesting plays where, like, you tribute off a Witch for a Cannon Soldier or a Toon Summon Skull, get another Toon Summon Skull to hand, and then tribute again. There's some very interesting stuff that you can do with these recruiters, so that's why we're playing all 4. And lastly, for the monsters, we have 3 Magician of Faith to get back any of our powerful limited spells, as well as potentially getting back something like Toon World if, you know, we need a copy of Toon World in hand and our opponents removed it with something like a Mystical Space Typhoon, or negated its effect with something like a Magic Jammer or Solemn Judgment. For the other spells, we of course have the Power 5 limited spells, Change of Heart, Dark Hole, Monster Reborn, Pot of Greed, and Raigeki. And we are also playing some other limited spells from Magic Ruler. We're playing Snatch Steal as a great way to get more aggressive, and you can also use it to tribute off one of your opponent's monsters for a Toon Summon Skull or a Cannon Soldier. And we're also playing a Forceful Sentry. Now, in earlier builds of the deck, I was playing the other hand rips, Delinquent Duo and Confiscation as well, and I've got them on the side for if you want to bring them in when you're sure you're going first. But after testing it a little bit, I found that the 1,000 life point cost was just a little bit too much in this deck, as you are paying a lot of life points in general. Now, those life point costs could potentially make you want to play something like Megamorph, and that's the direction you could go in with this deck, but I honestly think that's pretty bad, as it doesn't necessarily one-shot kill your opponent, and it's just way too fragile, and you're adding just another brick to a deck filled with bricks already. So I don't really think it's that good, but it's something that you can experiment with if you want. For the other spells, we of course have the 3 Toon World, as I mentioned. You could maybe cut this down to 2, but Toon World is such an important part of your strategy that you really need to see it, or else you can't get any of your plays off the ground. So that's why we're playing 3. We are also playing 3 Giant Trunade to pair with the Toon World, and also potentially clear the way to attack in. But what's nice about Giant Trunade is that if Toon World is bounced back to hand and not destroyed, then it won't destroy the Toon monsters that you've brought out, because the Toon monsters have a clause that say that if Toon World on the field is destroyed, then they're just destroyed as well. So Giant Trunade can get around that because it doesn't actually destroy Toon World. So it's a nice synergy there. It can also clear away your opponent's traps, potentially, if you think your opponent might have like a Mirror Force or something. We're also playing 2 Mystical Space Typhoon, just a bit more spell and trap removal, potentially clearing the way to make your Toon plays safe. And we also have 2 Soul Exchange here. Soul Exchange is great with Toon Summon Skull, as the Toon monsters can't attack the turn they're summoned anyways, so in general, you don't really care about the loss of battle phase restriction on Soul Exchange. And it's just another form of removal that can get rid of powerful flip monsters like Magician of Faith. So we are playing 2 copies of this. We don't really need 3, as we do have the Change of Heart in the Snatch deal as well. For the traps, we are playing 3 Solemn Judgment and 3 Magic Jammer, as our boards are very, very fragile here, and we really need to have things in the deck that can potentially protect things like Toon World, or just protect our board from things like Raigeki and the like. So I think that these counter traps are a must include in the deck, and are very good. And we're also playing a Mirror Force, of course, because it's just such a powerful card if you're able to pull it off. You know, maybe you don't really need to put this in because you don't really care about your opponent's monsters on field if you're able to get the Toons out. So maybe something like a Waboku would be a bit better here. But I like the Mirror Force. I think that sometimes you just do need removal to prevent yourself from dying if you don't get the Toon combos online. For the side deck, we have 3 Mechanical Chasers if we want to get a bit more aggressive, 3 Fisher if we are getting a bit more aggressive. This can be great to clear problematic walls like Giant Soldier of Stone or Banisher of the Light. We also have an additional Mystical Space Typhoon if we want to get a bit more aggressive in spell and trap removal, 3 7 Tools of the Bandit if we think our opponent's going to side in counter traps as well, and 3 Waboku if we want to get a bit more defensive. We also have the 2 Hand Rips in the side here, although honestly in future iterations of this deck, if I do ever revisit this deck, I'll probably take these out, as even if you know you're going first, they can just be major bricks late game, and you really can't afford to be paying 1,000 life points for them on top of all the other life points that you have to pay. But with all that out of the way, let's dive into some games and see whether the Toons really are as bad as I've made them out to be. Okay, for our first game here, we've got a game against Declan, who's been very active in the Discord server. Always a pleasure to have them on the channel. We are playing Toons, unclear what they're playing, but we're going to hopefully win the rock, paper, scissors, and we do. So we will be able to go first. I mean, I'm not sure if it's really that useful for us, but it's something here. This is a pretty superb hand right here, actually. We've got the Toon World, we've got the Soul Exchange, we've got Toon Summon Skull, we've got Mystical Space Typhoon. This is an incredibly good hand, however, it's not really that good going first. We're just going to set the Mystical Space Typhoon and pass back to them, as we don't really have anything else to do. And they're going to activate Pot of Greed, which is very nice for them. Hopefully it doesn't give them anything too good here. They're going to bring out a Witch and just attack in for 11. That's perfectly fine by us. We'll take the 11. Main 2, they're just going to set 1, set 2, pass back to us, and we are just going to blind Mystical Space Typhoon in the end phase, as we want to potentially hit something that can stop our Toon World from hitting the field. So we are just going to blind snipe one of their back row. It's a trap hole. That's not the best snipe here because our Toon monsters can dodge around trap hole. So not the best, but it is what it is. So we're going to activate Toon World here. Hopefully it goes through, and it looks like it does. So we'll be able to potentially bring out the Toon Summon Skull here. We're going to Soul Exchange and then Special Summon out the Toon Summon Skull. They will get a search here, so this isn't the best. And maybe we should have gone for like a Snatch deal instead, just to get the beats on. But like, I think this is fine. We've got them on like a 4-turn clock, potentially, if we just keep attacking him with Summon Skull. And realistically, it's more of a 3-turn clock if we can get just a little bit more damage in there. So I feel very fine about this. We've also got a Solemn to negate anything big. And so we'll pass to them. They are going to activate heavy, so I'm very glad we have this Solemn here. We will drop down to 2950, which is a bit unfortunate, but it looks like they don't have more spell and trap removal, so we're very fine with that. We draw Magic Jammer, which is great in case they ever do get more spell and trap removal. That will be a very nice option here. We're going to change apart their set. It's a man your bug, so we'll flip it up and pop itself, and then we'll just attack in. Now, we forget that the Toons also have a restriction on attacking where they must pay 500 life points to attack, which is very annoying, but we make up for it later in the game, so it doesn't really matter here. We're going to set the Magic Jammer just in case and pass back to them. They're going to set another, and pass back to us. And we draw Raigeki, which is honestly perfect. We're just going to fire that off, clear whatever they've got. It is Magician of Faith, so I'm very glad we Raigeki'd there. And we're going to attack in for another 2,500. Now, our opponent does note that we have to pay the 500s for these, so we will just correct our actions here, paying 1,000 total for our 2 attacks. But I'm feeling pretty good about this. If they bring out a monster in face-up attack position, I think we just win next turn potentially by Snatch stealing it. They're going to activate Change of Heart, though, and so we do have to Magic Jammer this, so we do lose our Snatch steal, but I think we're still in a pretty decent position. They're going to summon out Mother Grizzly and attack, and we're not going to attack into that. We can just attack directly. And unfortunately, here's what I was referring to with the confiscation. This is a major brick in our hand, and we actually don't want to activate it at all, because if we activate it and then attack in with the Toon Summon Skull, first of all, we're dead to a Cannon Soldier, and second of all, we can't actually attack with Toon Summon Skull afterwards either. So we are just going to attack in for 2,500, and we just gotta hope that they don't get anything good. At least here they can't crash into our Toon Summon Skull with a Mother Grizzly, as Mother Grizzly could potentially get out something like Catapult Turtle, which would be really bad news for us. But it looks like they can't do that here. We're just going to set the confiscation as a bluff, pass back to them, and hopefully we're okay here. Unfortunately for us, they do draw the Raigeki, so if they've got another monster in hand, which we do in fact know that they do off of their search earlier, then they just win the game. So they're going to bring it out, and that will just be the end of the game. So, you know, we didn't draw many monsters there, to be fair, but, you know, we did draw a lot of super powerful cards and get in a lot of attacks with the Summon Skull, and it just wasn't enough. You know, we got them down to 500, but 500 is still not 0, and so we weren't able to win that game. And honestly, you know, given that they're on Mother Grizzly, it seems like they're probably on Catapult Turtle OTK, which is not a very good deck. So the Toon deck is already losing off the bat to a not very meta deck. Quite unfortunate here. We're going to go into game 2, and hopefully things will be a bit better for us here. Let's see what we get. We are going to get some Witches and a Faith, which is very nice, and we do have the Toon Summon Skull as well. Unfortunately, we don't have Toon World just yet, but we do have 2 Solemns, which is very nice. We're going to set 1 Solemn, hopefully baiting out some spell and trap removal, as we don't really want to use up the Solemns yet. They're going to bring out a Witch, that's fine by us, and they're going to attack in here, and luckily we are able to rebuff that attack. They're going to set 1 pass back to us, and we draw Mechanical Chaser, which is very nice. We'll bring out the Mechanical Chaser. They're fine by that, and we're just going to attack in for everything. If they've got Mirror Force here, we honestly maybe could activate Solemn Judgment, as we do have another in hand, and this is a fair amount of damage. Luckily, it doesn't look like they do, so they're just going to take the full 1850. And they had Cyber Jar to hand, which is a little bit unfortunate for us. That we'll be able to deal with our board, but we will draw 5 and potentially draw into a Toon World, which is very nice. They're going to set 2 and pass back to us. We draw a Mirror Force, which is pretty good. But we're just going to attack into what is very likely the Cyber Jar here, and it is indeed. So that will destroy our whole field here, but we will be able to get a search off the Witch. We unfortunately don't get any monsters off of our Cyber Jar there, and they will get 2 very good monsters indeed, as well as a Fisher, Reborn, and Last Will, all of which are pretty great. We do get Toon World though, which is very nice, and we do get Soul Exchange to pair with the Toon Summon Skull for later. We also have a Magic Jammer and 2 Mystical Space Typhoons here, which is pretty good. They are just going to probably, yep, it looks like they're just going to set the Spear Cretin, probably summon out the Mystic Tomato and attack, although they could potentially just set both to potentially, you know, hide which is which, but I think this is fine. And they're going to add the Last Will, the Reborn, and the Fisher to hand, while we add our spells and traps as well. Main 2, we just we make a bit of a misplay here because we don't remember that we can't actually activate Soul Exchange in main phase 2, as we have used our battle phase there. So we're trying to snipe their back row and then go for the Toon Summon Skull play here, but that's actually not really something we can do. So our opponent will point this out to us later, so it doesn't really matter that much. So we'll just take back this play here. We'll add the Soul Exchange, the Summon Skull, and the Toon World back to hand. We'll still set the Witch, and they will get back their Spear Cretin. So very easily repairable board state. We already knew that it was a Spear Cretin anyways, so not a super big deal. We're going to set this Mirror Force here and pass back to them. They're going to flip up the Spear Cretin and attack in. So they will attack into our Witch, but we do have the Mirror Force here. They'll be able to get a monster back from grave, but so will we. So we're going to get back the Witch just in case they get back the Cyber Jar. And it looks like they're just going to get back a Witch as well, as they do know that we have the Soul Exchange in hand. Main 2, they're going to think about exactly what to do here. Set 2, pass back to us. We draw another Toon World, and again, Toon World can be a bit of a brick, but we really do need to draw to get our plays online. And we do have a pretty decent play here. We don't necessarily want to go for the Soul Exchange here, as we do know that that's just a Witch, and we don't necessarily want them to search. So we're just going to bring out a Toon Summon Skull, tributing off our own Witch, and then we're going to tribute off our other Witch here, and grab a Cannon Soldier to hand. This will potentially just be enough to win the game. We're going to set a Magician of Faith there, set another Solemn Judgment. We've got 3 counter traps here, so we're feeling pretty good about our chances. They're going to try and snipe this Toon World here, and this is a slight misplay. I think we probably should have just activated the other Toon World as well. We would have gone down 1,000 more, but it would have insulated us against this Mystical Space Typhoon play. But as is, we do just have to use up a Magic Jammer here, and we just got to hope that they don't have enough interaction here to potentially kill us. They're going to activate Last Will, and we probably should just Solemn Judgment this, but, we only have 1 Solemn Judgment left after this, so we want to save it for that. We will Solemn Judgment the Heavy Storm there. And I'm very glad we did save both Solemn Judgments. And we do have 2 Solemn Judgments for those 2 very powerful spells. But if we had had the additional copy of Toon World online, then maybe this would have gone a bit better. Although, who's to say? They might have just, Mystical Space Typhoon one of our back row instead. Not the Toon Worlds, but one of our set counter traps. So it might have turned out the same way here. Unfortunately, they will bring out a Witch of the Black Forest, Reborn, a Mystic Tomato here, crash into a Toon Summon Skull here, so they will be able to get out another Witch, and they'll also be able to Last Will out a Catapult Turtle, and that will just be the end of the game, because on board, they've already got 1,600, and they haven't normal summoned yet this turn, so they can distribute off a Witch, get another monster to hand, and that will just be all she wrote. It's quite unfortunate, as we actually did manage to have game there for the next turn, as, these 2 Toon Summon Skulls would deal 5,000 damage. We could bring out Cannon Soldier, tribute our entire board away, and that would just be lethal. But unfortunately, our opponent just had enough interaction to counter that. So that will just be the end of the game, and quite unfortunate. Toons couldn't really win against a deck that's about as jank as Toons are. So I think that this just shows how slow the Toon deck can be and how much that can cost it, even if it does have some very imposing end boards. But this would be quite a short and boring video if I just featured the one duel with Toons. So I've got a very special treat for y'all. We actually managed to play a Toon mirror match as well. And it was pretty fun to watch, as the Toons have some very interesting anti-synergies when facing against each other. So let's dive into that game and see how that went. Okay, we've got a game against a Ratos here, a very good duelist and frequent guest on the channel. Always a pleasure to have them on. And they did win the rock, paper, scissors here, so they will be able to go first. We're playing the Toon mirror match. This should be a pretty fun time, as this is something that you'll realistically never actually see if you're just playing, random games in this format. So, unfortunately, this was a very good going first hand, but it looks like they are going to be going first instead. They're going to activate a Toon World and just start setting up their board, bringing out a Toon Mermaid, setting one and setting another, and then just passing back to us. We don't really have any good way to capitalize on this board, and the Toon Mermaid will unfortunately just be able to attack into us next turn. So we're just going to try attacking into their set. If it's Sand Game, we can forceful back what they search. Unfortunately, it is not. It's just a Witch. we're going to activate a Toon World of our own, and they're going to actually Magic Jammer that, preventing us from getting out Toons of our own. Because interestingly enough, the Toons can actually not attack directly if your opponent controls a Toon monster. So, us being able to bring out a Toon Mermaid here would potentially stymie them from just attacking directly with the Toon Mermaid. So, unfortunately, we won't be able to pull that off, and we'll just pass back to them. There's no real point in Forceful Sentrying the last card in their hand, as we want to probably save the Forceful Sentry for whatever they search with the Witch here. But they will likely just be able to commit that to board anyways here. We're going to grab a Cannon Soldier. Maybe we could have added just another Recruiter instead. But Cannon Soldier can test the Toon Mermaid, so that's why we got it. It's actually the only monster in our deck, in our main deck at least, that can test Toon Mermaid. So that's why we got it. They're going to Forceful and send that Cannon Soldier back to deck, unfortunately. So we won't be able to clear the Toon Mermaid unless we draw another copy of Toon World. They're going to set 2, pass back to us. We draw another Toon Mermaid, which isn't quite the best here. We're going to set the Magician of Faith, set the Forceful Sentry, hopefully trying to bait out some spell and trap removal. And they're going to pass back to us. They're just going to attack directly. We're going to take another 14 here. And they're going to set another pass back to us. We can potentially get some Toons on field now. It's kind of risky. If they've got a Solemn, they can prevent our Magician of Faith from going off. But I think we just have to do it. We're going to flip up the Magician of Faith. And that's fine by them. So we're going to grab a Toon World. And we're just going to attempt to activate it. Pay 1,000. Unfortunately, they do have a Mystical Space Typhoon for this. But funnily enough, this actually will clear their own Toon Mermaid as well. As the Toons just say, if Toon World on the field is destroyed, destroy this card. It doesn't specify your own Toon World. So that's a very funny anti-synergy in this deck. And because of that, we're just going to attack into their Sangan. They'll search out another Sangan, and we're just going to attack directly with Magician as well. They'll drop down 300. We're just going to Forceful Sentry that Sangan back to the deck, as they could potentially summon out the Sangan on their turn, crash into our Witch, get a Toon Mermaid, summon it out on field in a way that dodges around the Forceful Sentry. So we'll send that back to deck. They'll draw, they'll pass back to us, and this could potentially just do it here. We're going to attack in for 1,400. We could switch our Magician to defense, but honestly, we don't really care about any of their non-Toon offensive threats, and the Toon threats can just attack directly, so it doesn't matter. We're going to set a Solemn, pass back to them, and they're going to think about exactly what to do here. They're going to activate Monster Reborn, targeting the Witch, and we're going to think about this, and we are actually just going to Solemn this, just keep them off of any potential plays that they've got. They're going to pass back to us, and we draw Trunade, which could potentially be good. We could Trunade the board here, and then just try and get in for 14. They'll have to pay 1,000 to activate Toon World again, which could just be good enough. Looks like we're not going to do that, though. We're just going to attack in with the Witch for 11. We switched our Magician to defense here, as we are running very low. We're at 1550. And I guess we are just going to Trunade in the end phase there. Pass back to them. They'll have to reactivate Toon World here if they want to use it. Unfortunately, they do have a Raigeki for us, and they also have a Cannon Soldier, so that will just be the end of the game no matter what we search here, as we're not playing Karibo in the main deck. So that will just be the end of the game, and that was very interesting, I think. There were some very interesting anti-synergies with the Toon deck, like destroying your opponent's Toon World, destroying your own Toon monsters is very, very funny. And there are also some interesting things you have to play around, like playing around your opponent bringing out Toon monsters to prevent your Toon monsters from attacking directly. So, very interesting game one, I think. We are going to be able to go first for game 2. So that will be very nice here. Hopefully we can set up a pretty good board to start with and potentially get the offensive shoe on our foot this time. We draw a Toon World and a Toon Mermaid here, so we could just go for that. And that might be worth doing, in fact. We are indeed going to go for that. Pay 1,000, bring out a Toon Mermaid, and Trunade back the Toon World back to hand. So that way, they can't easily destroy this Toon Mermaid here. We're going to set a Solemn Judgment, set a Magic Jammer, and pass back to them. They're going to draw, and they're going to activate a Fisher here. We are going to let that go through. We do have a Magic Jammer of our own, but I think we want to save that for more powerful plays. They're just going to bring out a Mechanical Chaser. It looks like we both sided these in. And they're going to attack in for 1850. They're going to set one, pass back to us. We draw Trunade, which is not the best right now, but not terrible either. We're just going to attack into their Mechanical Chaser with our Mechanical Chaser, clear it, pass back to them. And they're going to activate Delinquent Duo. We could Magic Jammer here, but honestly, we're not too torn up about losing either of the cards in our hand. It does prevent us from making some Toon plays later, and it does turn off our Magic Jammer here, but we do have a Solemn Judgment in case they've got anything super good. They're going to summon out the Cannon Soldier here, attack in for 1400, and they'll just pass back to us. We draw Snatch Steal, which is honestly the best draw we could have gotten here. We're going to take control of their Cannon Soldier, try attacking in for 14. That will go through. We'll tribute off the Cannon Soldier to inflict 500 additional damage to them. They'll draw, set 1, pass back to us. We draw Magic Jammer, which we'll just keep in hand as fodder for our other Magic Jammer. Pass back to them. They've got Toon World. We got to think about this, and we are actually going to just Magic Jammer that Toon World, prevent them from getting Toon monsters online. They're going to set 1, pass back to us. We draw Magician of Faith, which is super nice. We'll set that, pass back to them. They're going to bring a Mechanical Chaser. That's fine by us. They're going to flip up a Magician of Faith here, and they've got some pretty good monsters in Grave. I think we actually might want to Solemn this, and we are debating it. So we are just going to say that's fine, I guess. We've got the Magician of Faith of our own, so we can potentially just Snatch Steal if they bring out a Toon or something. So I guess we're going for that. I don't know. Maybe it would have been worth Solemning here. Then they reveal that they are on Banisher there. So this monster will get banished here. But we will still be able to get back the Snatch Steal. And we'll take an additional 400 from their other attacks. Main 2, they're just going to activate Toon World. And that's fine by us. If they bring out a Toon, we can take control of it. If they don't, we can always just Mechanical Chaser attack over it. And we draw Soul Exchange, which isn't quite the best here, but we can still take that Mechanical Chaser. We'll attack in to the Banisher of the Light, dropping them down to 1350, because, you know, if they do attack in with the Toon Mermaid, that's 1400 damage, dropping us down to relatively low life points, but we can potentially just kill them in the coming turns, because they'll pay 500 for that, dropping them down to 850. We can attack over the Toon Mermaid on the next turn, which will be 450 more. So we're feeling pretty decent about this. They do gain 1,000, so our math is off a little bit. And they'll activate Pot of Greed. Now, we're debating Solemn Judgmenting this just to keep them on super low resources, because I do think that we are in a pretty good position here. But we let that go through, figuring what's the worst that can happen. They're going to pay 5, and they're actually going to attack. Oh, okay, they're going to attack directly. That was just a misclick there. We're going to take 14. They will just tribute off that Magician of Faith for a Toon Summon Skull. We're going to think about it, and we are actually just going to Solemn that, as that does represent game on board. And they're going to set 1, pass back to us. We draw Mystical Space Typhoon, which is very nice here. We'll attack into the Toon Mermaid because it's a bit more damage. And then main 2, we're going to set this Mystical Space Typhoon, pass back to them. If they bring out any more Toons, we can just Mystical Space Typhoon their Toon World. And they're just going to set another, pass back to us. And we're going to think about this, but we're not actually going to fire the MST just yet. We're going to wait until they have some Toons to commit to field. Unfortunately for us, they do have a Mirror Force there, so we are in pretty dire straits. They're going to Mystical Space Typhoon, targeting their back row. It's a Mystical Space Typhoon for their Toon World, but unfortunately this still will be lethal damage, just barely. So that will just be the end of the game there. And, you know, we did lose this Toon mirror match very effectively, so maybe it's just I'm not a very good Toon player. But honestly, the deck is just pretty bad in my opinion. The mirror match was very, very fun. I will admit that. Even though we did lose 2-0, I thought this was a really interesting mirror match. A lot of interesting decisions that you have to make because the decks are like on the same power level. And also there's just a lot of very interesting anti-synergies with this mirror match. However, I think in general, the Toon deck is just really, really bad. One of the worst decks in the format. You know, maybe if the Toon monsters were slightly different, like if they could attack the turn that they're summoned, or, you know, they don't require you to pay 500 to attack, maybe they would be a little bit better. But unfortunately, as is, they're just pretty bad. But, you know, I could very well be wrong. What do you all think? Do you think that I built the Toon deck in the wrong way and that potentially building it differently could make it a bit better? Or do you think I've got the right build, but I'm just not the best Toon player here? Let me know down in the comments below. And as a note, we're basically at the end of treasure format coverage here. There's like a couple more videos I want to make. Like I want to make a video showing off the Burn versus Mill match, as those are 2 tier 1 decks. And I haven't actually shown off that matchup. So I think that'll be an interesting video to show. But besides that, I think we've gone through most of the jank decks that I want to cover. There are some other jank decks in the format, like Flash Assailant OTK, Shadow Ghoul Turbo with Painful Choice, but, you know, I feel like those decks are not really that good. You know, Toon World isn't the best either, but, like, Toons are so iconic that I did want to cover them here. But, you know, there's a lot of interesting unexplored strategies in the format, and maybe I will cover those sorts of decks in the future. Let me know down in the comments below if you want me to cover them. But as is, I think that I'm sort of wrapping up my coverage here, and I'll soon be transitioning into the next format, which we're calling Jar format because, you know, Empty Jar is essentially tier 0, I think. You know, there's some debate about this. Some people say it's tier 1. But it's still a very good deck, and Morphing Jar is a format warping card. But I'll be talking all about that a bit more, probably next week. Until then, let me know what you think of the deck and what you think of my coverage of Treasure format so far down in the comments below, and let me know if there are any other Treasure format videos you want me to make. But until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.